all five of your births were conscious natural births. The first two were water births in the birthing center, and then your last three were unassisted or just assisted with by your husband at home.
Yeah.
Um,
Yes.
can I suppose there's a there's a lot to talk about within five births, I'm sure.
Yes.
But maybe you can just give us an understanding of how it was going to the birthing center doing the water births, and then um, maybe a comparison to that, or why you chose that rather than a regular hospital birth, and then maybe also the unassisted births or the births at home, and maybe some of the pros and cons of each.
Okay. Yeah. Let me begin by saying that as a small child, I witnessed a birth because my mother and my aunt, for some reason, and I just put this together a few years ago, people would call on them whenever they were in labor. For whatever reason, I'm not sure exactly, because my mother's not a midwife, my aunt is not a midwife, but for some reason they were called upon. And I witnessed birth as a child, as a small child. And I remember there was one birth that I saw, and I just thought it was the most beautiful thing in the world. I mean, there were just these, as a child, you know, seeing it from a child's perspective, there was just all these colors coming from this woman as she gave birth, reds, blues, purples, whites, and I just thought it was beautiful. And not every child would have thought that. And in fact, the other children, it was quite a few of us, the other children that were there, they didn't feel that way, but I did. And so I've always carried that with me. And in fact, my mother had an unassisted lotus birth with me because her midwife she was flying to Hawaii to find her midwife, and I was almost born on the plane. She went into labor on the plane, and her midwife was on another island, so she ended up giving birth with her sister and a friend in Oahu. So she actually did an unassisted lotus birth with me, and I think that somehow I channeled that energy when we researched into having the water birth, because it's all in stages. And my advice would be that parents, take it easy on yourself and just know that there are baby steps. So not everybody's going to jump into an unassisted birth. Some people are going to choose other methods as their first birth. It's all up to the parents. But for me and for my husband, our decision to do a water birth first was because we were going to a hospital when I was pregnant with our first son, and we were in Atlanta, Georgia, and we chose to have a midwife as well as a doctor. But in that hospital, I didn't feel like I was respected or treated like a person. I felt like I was being treated almost like an animal. And this is just my experience. There were times where I was being talked down to because of my perspectives on natural childbirth, and it just didn't sit well with me. So when my husband and I decided to move to San Diego, I looked into birthing centers here, and I was about 6 months pregnant. And we moved here to California from Atlanta, and I found a water birth center here in San Diego, and went ahead and signed on and decided to give birth there. And that was a step up from the hospital in Atlanta. So I was treated with more respect. I was treated as a person, as a woman. And so that was a step up for me and for my husband. He was not included very much in the checkups and things like that. They would ask him to wait outside. So he was actually not really treated with a whole lot of respect during that pregnancy. But during the birth, he was given a little bit more respect as far as being a part of and being included in the birth process. He was able to come in and be with me while I was laboring and everything like that for the entire time. But there were some instances where the midwife was trying to be dominant over him. I mean, we had already decided we were not going to have an induced labor no matter how long it took to give birth to this child. And it took about 23 hours. So at a certain point, the midwife, she requested to, or she decided that she was going to birth the water bag. And I didn't really know where I was. I was kind of out of it, and my husband was very serious and firm that no, Ayida has already made the decision. She doesn't want to do that. Please do not do that. And she did it anyway. And so he was really upset about it, but we were still in the process, so he couldn't really direct anything towards her at that time. Yeah. But it stuck with us for a very long time. So after that birth, which was still a very beautiful birth process, my husband and I went away from it feeling like we had been taken advantage of to a degree, where the midwife did not recognize our decision not to birth the water bag. Because he could have been born within his bag of waters, which is a beautiful thing to happen. So it wasn't necessarily a bad thing that his water bag had not burst.
Right.
So and it was just very interesting that the midwife would not allow him to be a part of that decision. And when we were expecting our second son, we went back to the same water birth center, and everything was pretty much fine, but then at a certain point, I was asked to take this glycerin drink. It was to check my diabetic level, my sugar level, and to check and see if I had diabetes. And I said, I'll check into it. They give you the drink to take home, and then I took it home and I did research about it, and I found out that it was linked to certain conditions of the baby, causing problems with deformations with the baby and everything. Wow. I said, we went back the next day and I said, I cannot drink this. And I was treated very poorly because of this. The midwife at the birth center, she actually just told me, you can't give birth here if you don't take this test. So I said, I won't give birth here. I just won't do it. And she went out the door. She came back in and she said, we'll just take a blood sample, and that should be fine. And I was just looking at her like, I cannot believe that you just tried to test me to see if I was going to give in to you. What is that? And so that's when I made the link that not every person is who they say they are. And if a person is supposed to be assisting me in my own birth process, then she should be able to find a way around something as simple as drinking a chemical drink that could be detrimental to my child. So we gave birth to the baby there, and it was another really nice experience. But what I came away, the thoughts that I came away from that birth process with were that I'm not going to be put through this kind of process again. And when we became pregnant with baby number 3, I started looking up midwives, and I said, I'm not going to give birth at that birth center again. I'm going to have to find someone who can come to my house and help me give birth at home. It was very hard to find what I was looking for. And then right when I was going to give up and say, we'll just go back there again, I came across Laura Shanley and Unassisted Birth, her website, and I was blown away. And I just felt this sense of relief of, all these women have done it themselves. I'm going to do it myself. Yeah. And I printed out lots of information. I just devoured the website. I mean, I just looked into everything that she had on her website, and I was just feeling so strong and knowing that if they can do it, I can do it too. And I had completely forgotten that my mother had done the same thing, so it was already in me the whole time. And so I just kept digging deeper and deeper. I learned about human anatomy. I refreshed my mind on the way the woman's body works and the pregnancy and the birth process. And I just really did a lot of research. And I was really in a place where I could actually research the information and keep it in my mind. And it didn't just go in one ear and out the other because it was important to me. Right. And so now I fully understand why children don't always learn everything you teach them. It has to be important to them. Exactly. And so this was very important to me. And I also brought my husband into it. I said, you know what? We're going to do it ourselves. And I showed him the website, and I gave him information and everything. And I didn't know it at the time, but he was actually hesitant. He didn't tell me until much later that he was hesitant about it. But he did the research and everything, but he was like, "Are you sure you don't want to go to a water birth center? We could just drive, you know, it won't be an issue. We'll just drive out there. It's fine." And I said, "No, I'm not going to be poked. I'm not going to be prodded. I'm not going to be told what to do with my own body and my own child. And I want to do it myself." And I got so much negativity from family members whom I love. And I remember crying because people were saying, "This is wrong, and how can you do this? And you know, your baby's in danger." And I was just like, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe people are thinking this way." And I was just so hurt by that. But I got through it. We gave birth to our beautiful daughter, our first daughter, and it was such an amazing birth experience. And one thing that I can say about when people are on a plant-based diet, that birth is not messy. It's not a huge mess the way they make it look on television.
Right.
It's very clean, and it's very beautiful, and it's nothing like what the media portrays it to be. At least my experience was just wonderful. And I looked into hypnobirthing during that pregnancy. That was the first pregnancy that I did not take any vitamins, and I just only did plant-based foods. And actually, I did not even take supplements during that pregnancy. It was a very nurturing pregnancy, just very gentle. And my daughter, she is also very gentle and soft and delicate. And I know that is just directly coming from the wonderful laid-back birth and the wonderful pregnancy that I had with her.
Yeah.
It was just beautiful.